Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is March 8th, 2015. When we're not on air, you can always visit our website by going to www.arh.noaa.gov or just simply type in weather.gov and click on the map destination of your choice. You can always find information on the social media on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter by going to our social media page, which can be found at the top of the website there underneath social. You also can call our weather information line at 1-800-472-0391. Now, on to the hot topics of the day. We have winter weather advisories out for both the central interior areas, the upper Yukon and the uplands, and then across the northeastern Beaufort Seacoast. We also have advisories here, and these are for snow and blowing snow with westerly winds between 30 and 40 miles per hour with higher gusts up to 50 miles per hour, especially through the summits. Now, the advisory for the upper Yukon area is going to be through midnight tonight, and the one along the eastern Beaufort Seacoast starts at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning and runs through 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Now on to the weather systems that are going to be moving on to the east. We have first, let me go over the Kama cloud that extends well down into the Pacific here and then wraps up around Shimia. I'll put this into motion and you can see this large area of moisture just pulling on up into the southern areas of the Bering. This is a low pressure system that has pulled up over the central Aleutians earlier today and is bringing a mix of rain and snow along this area. And then looking across the northern Bering, you can see there's a colder air mass that's just filtering just to the south of the Bering Strait. So looking at a view closer to home, we'll see that this cold air mass is starting to pull all the way through down towards the first initial cold pushes come all the way through the western areas of the Gulf of Alaska. It looks clear here, however, it is mostly cloudy skies, just the cloud temperatures are nearly the same as the Gulf waters. Along the eastern areas of the Gulf of Alaska, we have a plume of moisture that pushed inland through the day, brings some scattered rain showers across the Juneau area. Much of the Panhandle saw showers today with warmer temperatures in the mid-40s. And then along the northern areas, no distinct weather pattern through this area as this low pressure system, mainly an upper level trough, is weakening across the southern areas of the state. So putting this into motion, you can see the darker shaded clouds are moving through, and this indicates the colder air mass that's behind the warmer air mass just across the southeast. And here's what the surface map looked earlier today. This low pressure system was just to the east of the Glen Allen area, 1,000 5 millibar low, which has pushed a cold front just to about the eastern areas of the Bering during the afternoon. Rain showers occurring across the southeast, and then along the north, just a weak troughing across the Brooks Range area with some snow shower activity happening and gusty winds along this very tight gradient across the northeastern areas of the state, hence the winter weather advisory for reduced visibilities and the blowing snow. Now across the northwest, they still had some light snow shower activity, and also across the southwestern areas. However, very weak and very little snow accumulated. Now the amounts that came across with the frontal system previously through the weekend averaged between 1 and 3 inches, with Fairbanks breaking a record 4.3 inches recorded at Fairbanks on Saturday, beating the previous record 2012 for snowfall is about 2.7 inches in 2012. So looking across the Talkeetna area and the western areas of the Brooks Range, they also received snow between 10 and 16 inches. So quite a bit of snow fell with this system, and it's going to continue to push off to the east. Now looking out towards the west, here's the other front that's across the central Aleutians with mainly snow showers along the southern areas of the Bering, and the central Aleutians are pretty much seeing all rain at this point. Now looking at your forecast through tonight, this front will stay stationary across the Aleutians here, bring a mix of rain and snow, and rain mainly across the central Aleutians. And then across the southwest, some gusty winds will pick up along this gradient that's on the backside of this low pressure system just hanging on near the Glen Allen area. So we'll continue to see some colder temperatures moving towards the southeast. However, it will stay warm enough overnight for them to see the scattered rain showers continue, with possible snow showers as you get up towards Yakutat, as it is cooling fairly quickly here. And then the snow will taper off across the upper Yukon, and we'll see snow continuing and gusty winds across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Also some gusty winds across the north and northwest Arctic coast as a tighter gradient stays along this area. However, precipitation amounts were tapering off, and the precipitation across the southwest will move up to about the western Alaska Range and begin to taper off as well. Now as we head into your day tomorrow, this low pressure system is going to begin to shift eastward, and therefore the colder temperatures are going to begin to make it into the southeast. They'll be hitting their high temperatures probably during the early morning hours, and then seeing that colder temperature filter in. So maybe a mix of rain and snow in the morning, and then changing over to snow by the afternoon. The highest accumulations will probably be between 1 and 3 inches back towards Yakutat, but Yakutat perhaps might see more if they have a little bit better lift and moisture with this system. Some light shower activity is possible across the Kenai with the blowing snow. We will possibly see some reduced visibilities around the Homer Bluff area, and then the gusty winds will cause some storm force winds along the Barren Island. So be aware, we're expecting wind gusts to be between 50 and 60 miles per hour across the marine areas here. So very gusty winds across the northern areas of the Cook Inlet, and we'll get onto that in the Marines. Very gusty winds all across the Gulf waters. Gusty winds staying through the day on your Monday for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Therefore, the blowing snow that will continue through the daytime on Monday. Across the southwest, gusty winds across the Alaska Range and possibly parts of Bristol Bay, and then across the eastern Bering, we'll see lighter wind speeds as higher pressure brings the colder air mass, quieter conditions in here. And then the low pressure system will move slightly further north and a little bit of east, but mainly the precip will stay across the eastern Aleutians and on west, where it changes over to snow across the Shimia area. And we'll see very gusty winds here, so we're going to see some precipitation blowing around this low pressure system. And then as we head into your Tuesday, this low pressure system is going to begin to weaken. However, they'll hang on to snow, mix of rain and snow across the Aleutians until this system completely diminishes. And then just scattered shower activity, winds will start coming down, but will still remain gusty across the western areas of the Gulf. And then offshore flow will increase across the coastal areas, especially through gaps. So be aware that you might be seeing some winds here between 15 and 30 miles per hour, possibly higher gusts through the channel terrain. And gusty wind conditions may hold on along the northern areas of the southeastern panhandle, but high pressure is going to be primarily moving in across a northern coast. So we should see winds taper off, and therefore the advisory in the eastern Beaufort Sea coast should be expiring. So much colder temperatures on the way for the entire state on Tuesday as we get a reinforcing cold air mass come through. However, today stayed rather mild all across the Gulf waters, with temperatures reaching up again into the mid 30s and into the mid to upper 40s across the southeast, 49 at Ketchikan this afternoon. And then just inland across Eagle and north, we saw temperatures get cold back down into the lower teens. And then as you look to the north, the coldest temperatures were along the Arctic coast, with -18 at AKwx and -16 at Barrow around to the Seward Peninsula, slow warming up into the single digits for the Kuskokwim. And then across the southwest, primarily temperatures in the 20s, and the Alaska Peninsula still in the mid-30s. Across the Bering, starting to get colder here, down into the upper 20s, with the mid-30s noted all across the Bering, a little bit cooler out west towards the Shimie locations. Now they're going to hang on to very similar temperatures overnight, just a little bit cooler across all of the Aleutians in the upper 20s to mid-30s, and then very cold temperatures across all the state, coming in at or below zero, with the coldest temperatures across the north and northwest down dropping to -20 to -25 degrees. With some gusty conditions, we will expect some wind chills, especially across the Brooks Range area. Mild temperatures still across the southeast in the mid-30s, with temperatures across south central dropping into the single digits to mid-teens, all along south central back towards the western Gulf locations. Now for your high temperature, as we head into Monday, we're going to see a very slow increase in temperatures, and they're only going to reach into the mid-20s across much of the Gulf water locations, warmest across Juneau and the southeastern areas until later in the day when that cold front pushes through. Across the entire state, temperatures will be at or below zero to the north. Across the Seward Peninsula, those temperatures are going to be much colder for tomorrow, and then across the Alaska Peninsula, even they are only going to see temperatures probably reaching into the upper 20s to mid-30s. And then across the chain, you'll see that warmer air mass around the low pressure system in the central Aleutians near 40 degrees colder behind the system. Now for your flying weather tomorrow, you'll want to watch out for IFR conditions across much of the southeast, as that low pressure system is going to be bringing snow and heavy at times possibly, and then MVFR conditions as gusty winds are bringing some light showery activity here, and then across the areas of the northeast, and then all along the Bering locations with a low pressure system sitting in the central Aleutians. Looking at your pass in more depth, we'll see VFR conditions at Anatuvik, and Adigan Pass will be MVFR to start, and then should go to MVFR. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass should be both VFR through the day and rainy as well. And Windy Pass will be VFR, Isabel Pass MVFR, Mentasta should go IFR to MVFR later in the day, and Tanita Pass will be VFR, Portage will be VFR, and IFR for Chilkoot and both White Pass. Now here's your freezing levels kind of draped across the southeast here in the northern Gulf back towards the Alaska Peninsula, and just along the low pressure system here in the Bering, and then the 2,000-foot level right over the central Aleutians, and 2,000 to 6,000 feet just to the southeast of the Gulf. Now looking at your icing tomorrow, below 10,000 feet, mainly across the areas of the Gulf, with widespread moderate conditions across this low pressure system here. Watch out for some areas around the weak low pressure there in the northeast. And then across the Bering, we'll see the widespread area due to low pressure dominating here, with moderate conditions possible around the center of the low pressure system. Now the jet stream is mainly a westerly flow across the state, with the strongest jet kind of dipping south of the chain here. So just weak troughing over the area is also seen across the state, bring northwesterly flow across the area and becoming more westerly across the Gulf, with very strong winds between 30 and 50 knots here. And low pressure system just sitting to the south of Kodiak Island. And then the low pressure system across the central Aleutians will have very strong winds all the way on the backside of this low pressure system. Very similar surface pattern, change of winds around the low pressure system out in the Gulf, and very strong winds at 3,000 feet between 30 and 40 knots all across the Gulf waters. Now, looking at your turbulence, looking at the Gulf and the southeastern locations, it's going to be mainly a speed shear across this location below 6,000 feet, and then across the Aleutian chain here, expect both a speed and directional shear in the Aleutians around this low pressure system as the winds back around with the low pressure. Now, in just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
The December 26, 2004 earthquake and tsunami in Asia put these events on the map as never before. Tens of thousands perished without warning when waves swallowed entire communities along coastlines there.
Oh my God, this is a tidal wave.
In this era of video technology, suddenly the horror of tsunamis was front and center. The vastness of the tsunami's reach was staggering. As this National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration animation shows, that tsunami literally reached into every ocean basin on this planet. For many, it was an introduction to one of nature's most fearsome natural phenomena. But for American tsunami survivors, it offered a frightening flashback.
Looking at that, I knew what those people were going through. And just as soon as I saw that water running up and people were running down to the beach when the water was draining away, they were going down and pick up the fish, you know. I said, man, get out of there as fast as you can, because that water's coming back. And boy, when it comes back, it really comes. There's no escaping it.
When I saw what happened in Thailand, I think it's the first time that I was ever really even emotional about it. I thought a lot about my dad, and I thought a lot about these families and what would happen to them and just the utter destruction. And I also was hoping that they would find a way to rebuild their lives and realize that eventually their lives will improve.
It's funny in a way that Alaska, with such incredible beauty, is a perfect place to come to understand tsunamis. But it makes sense, since it's a state in which powerful natural forces are at work. Above ground, gargantuan temperature variations have produced mountains of snowfall over the eons, giving rise to the region's celebrated glaciers. But in large measure, tsunamis form because of what goes on below ground. Earthquakes set the stage.
If we have an earthquake bigger than 7.0, we put out a tsunami warning.
Guy Urban is a geophysicist with NOAA's West Coast and Alaska Tsunami Warning Center.
A tsunami is a series of waves that's generated usually by a vertical displacement caused by seismic activity. We can also produce tsunamis by landslides, either above or below the water. We can get tsunamis from volcanoes that either explode above or below the water. Mount St. Helens, had that been near the water, that could have produced a tsunami. Also, we can produce tsunamis from stuff from outer space, such as comets or meteors coming into the Earth.
Urban and his colleagues are among a team of scientists charged with issuing formal warnings of tsunamis advancing on Alaska and the east and west coasts. He works out of this Palmer, Alaska facility, which sits in the shadows of snow-covered mountains north of Anchorage.
First thing we tell people, if you feel an earthquake that lasts more than 30 seconds, and get used to counting 1001, 1002, 1003, or 1 Mississippi, whichever way you do it. If it lasts more than 30 seconds and you're near the water, near the beach, we recommend you head to high ground as quickly as possible.
The data received here, and which allows them to forecast tsunamis, involve satellites and a network of ocean buoys and subsurface sensors.
We have to have some way to confirm that there was a tsunami generated, and that's what our water level data does, whether it's deep ocean buoys or harbor-type tide gauges. And the third thing is we have to have a communication system in order to get that information out to the people that need it. And the fourth one, which is probably one of the most important one, is the people got to know what to do with it.
Longtime Seward residents know what to do when tsunami warnings sound.
The first things that came about was the civil defense sirens that were in town, so that they could warn people if they had an alert. Here lately, then, we became a tsunami-ready community, first one in Alaska. And that program was to test how we brought in information, how we disseminated information, how we evacuated people.
Waterfront signs clearly mark tsunami hazard zones. while other signs in town point the way to higher ground and to evacuation routes. Fire Chief David Squires remains vigilant, but knows signs may not be enough, especially for new residents and the thousands of visitors who make Seward a vacation destination.
The older people have a very good idea, the older residents I should say, have a very good idea what happened in the last 64 earthquake. The newer people, one who just came to Seward, lived here only a year or two or 4 years, they're not quite aware of the power of the water.
Only an hour after the deadly Sumatran earthquake and tsunami in Asia, December 26, 2004, scientists marveled as Alaska mountains, 7,000 miles away, began to rumble. That part of the story, when tsunamis on American shores, continues.
Hello and welcome back to the show, and now we're on to your marine forecast. For the southeast, you're going to see some small craft winds across the outer waters and across the northern areas of the Lynn Canal. We're mainly going to have southerly winds to southwesterly winds on your Monday forecast, a little bit lighter speeds across the southern areas, with seas across the inside waters between 3 to 5 feet, and the outer waters will be seeing a range between 8 and 14 feet. As we head into your day on Tuesday, we're going to see those winds change direction with a northerly component all across the inner channels, 15 to 25 knots, and we'll see the strongest winds to the north. Seas will be between 3 to 4 feet across those inner waters, and the outside waters will mainly be an easterly wind, 15 knots, with the seas ranging between 8 and 9 feet. Looking across the southwestern areas of the Gulf and the Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait, we're going to see some very strong winds on your Monday forecast, with also some freezing spray, which we haven't seen for a while across the western areas, forecasted anyway. So we'll basically see a north to northwesterly wind across the entire area, and we'll have storm force winds across the western area, west of the Barren Islands at 50 knots, and then stronger gusts across the Shelikof Strait up to 45 knots, and gales across the western areas of the Gulf around 35 to 45 knots through the day, and also across the northern areas of the Gulf, gales between 35 and 40. The Prince William Sound small craft 30 knots, and then the northern Cook Inlet 20 knots, later speeds up there to 25 across the southern inlet. And then we'll see seas 6 feet across the Prince William Sound, 12 to 14 feet across the western Gulf. Shelikof Strait, we'll see 8 feet, and then we'll see 14 feet across the Barren Islands area, and 3 to 6 feet across the Cook Inlet, where the ice is in ice-free waters. Higher gusts across the southern areas of the Shelikof Strait. Now looking at your Tuesday forecast, a better day for boating here, and then we'll see a northerly flow across the area, small craft across the western Gulf and Barren Islands, and they'll also see the seas coming down between 2 to 6 feet across the Cook Inlet, and 9 feet across the Barren Islands to 7 feet across the western areas of the Gulf, and 6 feet also across the Shelikof Strait. Now looking at the Alaska Peninsula, a northerly wind flow across the area for Monday, with small crafts just to the southeast of the peninsula, and then 5 to 7 foot seas across the Bering side and 6 to 9 across the Pacific side. Looking at your Tuesday forecast, we'll see small craft across the area between 25 to 30 knots, northerly flow 5 to 8 foot seas across the Bering, 7 to 10 across the North Pacific. Across the Aleutians for tomorrow, very strong winds, mostly gales here with storm force around the low pressure system, out of the north direction becoming more east to southeast as you head towards the eastern Aleutians. 8 to 10 foot seas across the eastern areas of the Aleutians, and then much higher seas across the central areas up to 20 feet, and then down to 15 towards Shemya. Looking at your Tuesday forecast, we should see slightly lower speeds with 30 knots across the eastern areas of the Aleutians, and gales across the southern areas of the Aleutians there, and then the north between 30 to 40 knot as the low pressure system persists. 13 to 18 foot seas towards the west, and then 10 to 14 feet across the eastern areas. For the west coast, lighter winds up in this direction between 15 to 25 knots, small craft near the Pribilof Islands, and then seas will be ranged between 2 to 7 feet highest as you go south. For your Tuesday, very similar wind speeds to the north between 15 to 20 knots. Change of wind direction on Tuesday. Northerly flow across the southern areas of the Bering at small craft, and seas would be between 3 to 8 foot. Higher seas will be near the Pribilof Islands. Looking at your north and western coast, we have very strong winds across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast between 25 to 30 knots, and then around towards the Kotzebue Sound between 10 to 20 knots. And of course, this is all ice covered. And then a little bit lighter flow on your Tuesday forecast out of the northwest across the Kotzebue Sound, and lighter wind speeds, still a brisk wind there on the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Now let's recap your forecast for tonight. The snow advisory will continue across the uplands and the Yukon area, and then along the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. That starts tomorrow at 6 a.m. running through Tuesday for reduced visibilities, blowing snow between 30 to 40 mile-per-hour winds there. Low pressure system here will bring cold front towards the southeast tonight. However, they should stay light rain showers through the night, set back towards Yakutat. Some snow showers here and snow tapering off across the southwestern areas. Wind speeds picking up across the western areas of the Gulf, with snow occurring along the southern tip of the Kenai. Conditions will be tapering off across the eastern areas of the Bering, with a low pressure system keeping a gustier wind across the central and western Aleutians, with all snow just to the north of this system. As we head into your forecast on Monday, this low pressure system doesn't make much progress. However, a little bit further north, keeping rain over the central Aleutians and snow across the western areas. Very strong winds expected on your Monday forecast, just to the south and east of this low pressure moving across the southeast. So snow changing over across the southeast for the afternoon hours, and light snow continuing across the northeastern areas of the state. Now, however, when we go into your Tuesday forecast, this colder air mass is going to be plunging in across all of the state, bring much colder temperatures even to the southeast, and colder temperatures as well across all of the Aleutians. So stay tuned and stay updated. I hope to see you tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.